we better go ahead and get started. That clock is not right. I've got a clock going over here.
No, I don't think it is.
And while everybody's filtering in, we've been talking about some kind of gloom and doom stuff, race relations, fear, our own fears. And this week, I ran across a Bible verse that we've all probably heard a million times, but it struck me so profoundly that this was written over 2,000 years ago and is still relevant today. And it's hopefully where we're going with all this gloom and doom. It's from 1 Corinthians 13. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Amen.
Amen.
That's 2,000 years old. All theologians widely attribute that to Paul, and what a blessed human he was. Right. All right, back to the gloom and doom, right?
Enough of that positive
But
thinking.
that's where we're headed. We're headed for the truth, and we're headed for the love. So just give me one more class, and then we'll get there. I was handed a note this morning about the state of prisons and prisoners right here in North Carolina. We have 55 state prisons in North Carolina. And of course, every county, or 97 counties, have their own jail run by the sheriff. In 2020, in the state prisons, there were 20,960 people serving time. But here's one. When you include the sheriff's jails, that number goes up to over 110,000 North Carolinians who are currently incarcerated.
What you want to come here?
There are 5 federal prisons in North Carolina, and these numbers are not figured into that. And you can go on to the North Carolina Department of Justice website, and you can get an accurate count daily of the number of people who are currently incarcerated in North Carolina. And that includes both the jails and the prisons. The overwhelming majority of the people who are currently incarcerated in North Carolina are male. It averages between 5 and 7% are females, but don't worry, ladies, we're catching up. So, go girls, right?
Go bad girls.
So, and again, if you would like to help a person transitioning out of Craigie Prison or any prison, please see me. I have all kinds of information that can help you. Get involved in a group effort moving those people out to a successful transition. I'm glad you came and sat over here, because I'm going to need a theologian today. Yes, we are. All right. So, last week we talked a little bit about fear. There was an instinctual fear of falling, body integrity, loud noises, and then something we construct, like an ego fear, which is more like our identity. Like we are. You know, I'm a sister, I'm a brother, I am married. You know, this is my tribe, these are my people, this is my identity. And fear arises largely because our brains are constantly projecting into the future, monitoring for things which can either perturb those instinctual fear or upset those constructed fears that we have. And of course, we always come to the wrong conclusion because fear clouds our judgment and actually usually even makes fear worse. We begin to think more negatively about the things that we're afraid of. And the pull of this fear is greater than the acquisition of any reward. Now, I just read you a beautiful Bible verse about love, and I'm going to read you another Bible verse right now. John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. So that's a really powerful statement. There's a lot in that. There's no fear in love. So the things that we create to be afraid of, the others, the snakes, the whatever, you know, those things their reward is the love. And we're too afraid to move into it because of our fear. But what I really want to talk about today, and this is why I need you, I'm not sure I understand what this statement means. It says, because perfect love drives out fear. Because fear has to do with punishment. Sometimes you may see that translated as torment. Fear expects torment. Now, why on earth would we be pulling ourselves toward fear to expect punishment or torment? Thoughts? Thoughts?
Oftentimes, children behave because they have a healthy fear of punishment if they do not. We had this discussion when I was a teacher at Irwin, and we were talking about corporal punishment and our parents and how many parents of our parents today might be visited by social services if they spanked their children or whipped their children, or I got the switch from the switch bush, but how many of you had a switch bush? Okay, all right. But we talked about how we weren't sure that that was necessarily a bad thing, because that healthy fear of punishment led children to behave and do the right thing.
Why don't we drive at 80 miles an hour going to Asheville?
We have a fear of a ticket.
No,
Fear
a
of
crash.
Or a crash, yes.
There you go. That makes more sense.
What if, in your example, the teacher or the parent isn't around? What does that do for your motivation to do what you need, what's right?
I have a two-pronged answer to that. One, my grandmother gave me a spanking once a week for something she didn't see. It was regularly, and I deserved every one of them. Yeah, it was regularly scheduled. It was on Tuesdays after General Hospital.
What if you know?
But
What if you know that the authority figure is absent?
medicine isn't necessarily it's that many children believe that their parents would eventually find out. There were no secrets.
Well,
But
I
I
understand
understand
that.
what you're
I
saying.
grew up in that kind of neighborhood. But if your motivation is, I don't want X to be disappointed in me or to whip me or whatever, then it's really, I don't want to get caught. And if my motivation is, I love my parents, I know that they love me, and I want to be the best person I can be out of joy, gratefulness, whatever, then your motivation is deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Your motivation is, I want to be this.
The motivation is love.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think what Wiley's saying leads to that positive reinforcement. You have much better discipline with a child if you use positive reinforcement. I know that the teachers who use positive reinforcement have better control of their children than the ones that use a negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is sudden and you see the results quicker, but positive reinforcement, I think, wins in the long run.
I have a funny story.
Okay.
My mother, I had to stay with my mother for a while in between where we were living, and my oldest son was about 3, and we were sitting at the kitchen table one morning, and the sun was coming up, and my son asked my mother why she had all those candles on the back patio, the back porch. And she said, it's when we don't have light. You know, we have to. He said, well, we have the sun coming up. You don't need candles. And she said, that's right. We have the sun coming up. And he said, why does the sun come up? And she told him that God made the sun for us to keep us warm and whatever. And he said, well, he's going to be in a lot of trouble if he drops it. And then he said, Mom, Grandmother, do you believe in the devil? And she said, yes. And he said, does the devil live in the ground? And she said, well, the devil is in hell down below us. And he said, is he real? And she said, well, some people think so. And he said, well, he'd jump up out of the ground and grab me. And she said, I guess if you're bad, he will. And I said, Mother, no, don't teach him to be afraid. And she said, oh, a little fear never hurts anybody. And I thought, oh, no. Well, Jonathan was kind of difficult to take care of kid, but still.
Well, I mean, over 300 times in the Bible, we are instructed not to be afraid.
Right.
Jesus did say, however, don't be afraid of someone who threatens your life or who threatens your identity. Fear the person who can rob you of yourself, and fear God. So, a little healthy fear. I don't know if you got it. Yeah.
My mother or my father, I don't ever remember either one of them ever spanking me. But now my stepmother, she liked to spank.
Yeah.
She was always spanking me with a belt. And one time when she had spanked me, my grandmother had heard me crying, and so when I went out to my grandmother's, first thing she did was jerk my dress up and look at my legs, and she saw where she had been spanking me. So Grandma really told Daddy, and Daddy and Marie got into it, but it was for hitting my sister in the head with a stick of stove wood.
Ooh, that's.
But she got in my way. She was standing out, we had a bus that had wood in it, and it was sitting out behind the house, and she was outside, and I was throwing it out the window, and I didn't even know, she was out there, and evidently I hit her in the head, and she started crying, so.
Could I say something to Jess's story about, she got the things that.
Preemptive.
Yeah, preemptive.
I needed all of them,
I
unfortunately.
actually, and I've told this story, not lately, but a long time ago, this church before. I got in trouble at school for something I was doing. I was in grade school, somewhere between 6th and 8th grade. They went and they told my dad, and somehow, I can't remember whether he got a note or whatever. And so I talked to him about it. He wanted to know what was going on. And he patiently listened, and I says, no, this was wrong, it was blah, 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 blah. No, I didn't do it, I could prove blah, blah, and he just patiently listened until I got it all out. And then, to Shasta's point, he simply said, well, I believe you, Johnny. They probably got it. I believe you that they were wrong, but think of all the things you got away with. And so he validated me on one hand, but don't be concerned about that thing. And it struck me, and whenever I would get into, I never got spanked either, at least not from my dad. And if I didn't want to do something, and he wanted to do it, he would just quietly explain to me. And finally, you just did it because you got tired of all the talking. Love is patient.
Yeah.
Love is patient. Love is calm.
kind.
And all those things. When I think I was a very lucky person that had the type of dad I had.
Yeah.
But to go back to your original question, I think oftentimes we lean on fear because it gives us a sense of control. Control, I'm learning, is the greatest illusion that we will ever be given. Because I'm really bad when I live in fear to want to put everything so the negative thing that I don't want to happen doesn't happen. I jokingly call it, I bubble wrap, metaphorically bubble wrap a lot of things I love because I'm afraid of them getting hurt or taken away. For example, the pandemic, I wore a mask a lot longer than most people did, because I'm taking care of my grandparents. My grandfather takes chemo, and I didn't go out and socialize for 2 years, and I didn't really do anything for 2 years because I love him and I want to protect him. And obviously, it feels like the right choice, but you know what I mean? It was out of fear of wanting to make sure that he stayed okay.
I think that's out of love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit of both.
Can we look at the things we can agree on that are meant by that statement? For example, perfect love casts out fear of the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because we tend to bubble wrap ourselves.
Because the other is no longer other. They are all part of our tribe, as the bumper sticker out as you enter the church says. We are all part of one family. So it cast out fear of the other, and the other was big in Jesus' day. as it is in our day.
Mhm.
The Romans were other.
The Samaritan.
For the early followers, the Jewish leaders were other.
Others.
The zealots were other. And so forth and so forth and so forth. The other was everywhere. And the other was
keeps
fear.
under her purse.
And then Christ came along, the ultimate other. Imagine what a challenge to, like, if I put myself at that time, and I think what a challenge it would have been for someone to tell me to love my neighbor. What?
Yes, and that definition of other, as the Samaritan woman taught Jesus, changed.
And do we even know the other? We insulate ourselves so thoroughly that we don't see or recognize the other often.
I think that's one of the reasons why we create the other, is that it allows us to ignore people's plights. It allows us to bubble wrap ourselves in our own little safe little world. We don't have to experience their injustice. In fact, if they're another, we can actually just walk all over them because they have no tie to us at all. We have separated ourselves so much from people that it really doesn't matter what happens to them because I'm not tied to them at all. But love intimately connects. So what happens to one happens to another.
You know, but though you wrap yourself and you protect yourself, you're losing out on so many opportunities. And so much negative stuff can come from that. Like, we were talking about loneliness. You can insulate yourself to the point that you are driven to loneliness.
The fear
Right.
is greater than the reward.
Right.
So we have to consciously step into that perfect kind of love in order to accept the reward. Because our natural inclination is to pull back and keep ourselves safe and just live our lives and connect with a few people who are safe. That's enough. But when we move forward into the reward, that is such an act of love and such an act of courage to realize that you're willing to let go of what you consider to be your own best interest. It's not, but.
So can we agree then that another fear is literally the fear of living our lives that love delivers us from? We're so afraid, what if, that we don't live. And that, I'm not talking about, I don't think the passage is talking about not taking reasonable care for yourself. But think about the times when you didn't, or you were tempted not to do something important because you were afraid of failure. The failure was more real than doing, I keep thinking of Martin Luther King Jr. and all his trial. And he was so clear that you had to love the segregationists, and that the purpose was not only to free the downtrodden black people, but to free the oppressor. To free the oppressor.
Yeah, he's in bondage too, in a way.
Yeah, because the oppressor was in bondage.
Yeah, I have a real problem. I mean, not that I have a problem with what you're saying is correct, of course. I'm saying I have a personal problem forgiving and loving the oppressor, because I want justice. And how are they together? Are justice and love opposing?
Depends on how you handle it.
Well, we talked a little bit ago about, you mentioned about the prison system.
Right.
That's all justice. Is that fixing anything? I don't think so. It's binding everything up even more.
But that's man's justice.
Or maybe the ultimate justice would be to see the reform of the oppressor.
But the rest of the verse in Micah says, love mercy, and will come be with your God.
And I didn't act at the time. I had other things at the time, but we were talking when we were coming back on the flight from. We were in O'Hare because we had a stopover in O'Hare from Seattle, and I was talking with some people on the flight, and they're from Hendersonville, and right away it came up that because I said I'm from this end of Asheville, and they're from that end of Asheville, and crime is a big thing to them, and I thought, and my thought at the time, I didn't realize, is we're both agreed there. I think crime is a bad thing, but white collar crime is really the root of most of this low income crime that is very violent. And I didn't get into it at the time, but just the idea of that all, like I said, it all binds us, and you got to kind of love each other. But it struck me at the time.
We think
We divide everything up into tribes, even crime. We divide that up. They're focused on one, and it's really a whole.
Starts in Washington.
it all
Starts in
goes back, doesn't
Washington.
it, to the definition of justice, of your way.
Just a beautiful example right now, I think, of the oppressed and the oppressor working together to find full justice is in South Africa, Robben Island, which is where Nelson Mandela was held in prison. Right now, both those who work the jail and those who are in jail are working together to host tours of the prison system and how there's been reformation in the prison system, and to talk about Nelson Mandela's journey in the system. And they've all become friends because you have to live on that island because you have to take like an hour and a half ferry to get there. So they live on this island and they work together and they do their whole lives together. And there's this peace and camaraderie and years of group therapy and just sorting things out together and truly following this peaceful, nonviolent way to reconciliation and justice. It was mind-blowing.
The definition of justice that tends to come to my mind, equates justice with retribution for wrongdoing. But that's not the biblical definition of justice. Justice is eliminating the threat to society and restoring the person, the perpetrator, or the to being a positive contributor to society. We don't, but when we think of justice for ourselves, we think of it positive.
But it's really hard to think of justice for that person who's injured us or somebody we love, because we have to get to know that person. We have to think about what they've gone through. And I don't want to think about that. That person hurt me.
Yes. Yes. We want, it's useful in the short run to think of that person as wholly other. Love eliminates the fiction that anyone, for me, even Donald Trump, is wholly other.
Well, justice
I can do
doesn't
it.
necessarily mean punishment.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah, that's the thing. Punishment and justice are not the same things biblically.
And the oppressor is in our family too. The oppressor is very much our tribe. So,
Now, that doesn't mean I don't oppose,
and won't speak the truth, right?
yeah.
Right. There are still some truths to be spoken, but, I wrote this down. I don't care what you are, I care what you did.
I care what? What you did.
Wait a minute. I do care
Right.
who you are instead of what.
But if you go into the take-home message there, it's not about you as a person, it's about something you did. You as a person is worthy and not another and part of my tribe, and God loves you just like He loves me. But you may have done something wrong that we need to talk about. Yeah, I think that's what that means. I didn't know what that meant, so I wrote that down.
I used to tell my children, I don't care so much about what you did. I care more about what you're going to do.
What did you learn?
That's good. What are you gonna do?
When we argue at my house, we say, I love you right now. I don't like you right now, but I love you.
I used to say that.
Yeah.
Even to my husband.
Oh,
I love you, but I don't like you right this minute.
And it diffuses a lot, honestly, in our arguments.
Right. The way
I
this is-
noticed all us, all of us that are still married were looking at each other.
It changes the way you think about things once you're alone. You think back about a lot of things. Good, bad, wonderful. Wish it didn't happen. There's a lot of things.
Everything that happens gets you to, and the way you handle it or react to it,
Where you are
is
today.
it gets you to where you are today.
It's true. It's true.
I wasn't happy that I had a divorce, a bad marriage, bad first marriage, but it's where it helped me get to where I am today, and I feel like I'm in a really good place.
I have an even more difficult to deal with example of that, and it is my husband's death got me to where I am today. And it was hard to accept that at times. But you have to learn that the bad things that happen to in your life can either overwhelm you and destroy you to that point, or you have to learn from it and move on. I told my pastor then I had to get back up on the horse and ride. You know, you just can't lay down and, you know, I'm sorry, my sister would be correcting me, lie down and, give up. What good is that? You know, but I want to say one other thing about loving. If you love a person, it's often very difficult to divide that person from their actions. And I think very often what we hate about a person is their actions, or what we don't like about them is their actions. But I wish that I could compartmentalize and divide that, but you can't. That's part of the person. So anyway.
Well, their actions are
Actions speak louder than words,
as
as we've all heard.
a lot of times they do come from misinformation, lack of information. And, you know, loving somebody is about loving where they are right then. Yeah.
I'm sorry I'm late. My mother was kind of ill, but I just wanted to share with you all. It's very special to me. I went to Spartanburg last week where my son took his life. And this whole year I've been trying to figure out what happened. And so I went to the school that he went to, Wofford College. And I wanted to find out when he quit college if why nobody reached out to us. He was an A student, he had a scholarship. I wondered if any of the professors, might have noticed. But honestly, I realized that I was trying to find somebody to blame or someone to hold responsible. And then I talked to my son Kyle, who had the handgun in his room that my son used. And he lived in the home of my ex-husband, who was an Army colonel, who has worked with soldiers who have committed suicide. And my ex-husband knew that my son was mentally ill, as did my son, and they still had a gun. So I realized, as I talked to my son, Kyle, that I was holding a big grudge in my heart. I really just wanted one of them to say, I'm sorry that I had the gun. I don't know why we let the gun be there. But they can't do that. They just can't see that yet, And then the last person I had to come to terms with was myself, because I've been blaming myself, because I'm like, Lord, you're responsible. You didn't kind of committed. You didn't do what you should have done. You didn't lock it in the house. But I came to terms this week. I had like a God moment. Just like, my son kind of came to me, I don't know if you want to say in a dream or whatever, but he just said, Mom, put this behind. I want to see you laugh. I want to see you get out and just, be with people in community. But the main thing I got from him was that the only message that I can do is, first of all, forgive. Forgive all these people. I mean, every day, every minute, every moment, I'm still doing that, even right now. But just have hope for the future. Because guns are not going to go away. They're in America. I can get up on a platform and scream my story all day long, and people are still going to, and guns aren't really, I don't think they're really, I really believe.
Guns aren't as much the issue as what people do with guns.
Yes.
And that's what you've had to deal with.
Exactly.
But I am surprised that your son and your ex-husband haven't said, I'm so sorry for having that gun there.
I'm so sorry that we didn't realize what you were going through.
No, you have. I mean, I couldn't have made it without all of you all and your support, honestly. And I know, I'm sorry to talk about it so much, but it just helps. And yesterday I was down in Marshall. I was just out and about, and they were having an open mic. And I knew some people there, and they said, why don't you get up and tell a little bit? And so I prayed. I was like, okay, I don't want this to be about me, okay? I don't want it even to be about Colton. I wanted it to be about sharing the message that the only reason that I'm sitting here, and like what you said, not giving up, is because of all of you all. and the smiles that you give and the prayers that you've sent. You know, and when I've been out and about traveling around this last couple of weeks, I've come in contact with people that are suffering out on the street, that are like homeless, that are not drinking or using drugs, but they're just mentally, you know, they have problems. And they're just being overlooked. You know, they're just like the untouchables.
They're the other.
But this suffering inside of me is drawing me into their hearts. And I believe now this whole thing, what I have to say every minute of every day is that what you said, you know, suffering, grief, that's what ties us together. But it's also what brings that unconditional love, you know? So thank you so much for this class and for.
Well, I feel like, Emily, we didn't know what you were going through because you didn't come to us until you found out we were open and accepting, which was not long before the act happened.
But had we
We
hugged
didn't.
her and said, "Are you okay?" or "Good
Yeah.
morning, how are you doing?"
But she knows we didn't
You've
know.
done that. And I
But
mean,
we have tried to do that since, but we
You
didn't
have.
know ahead of time.
you have, and the thing is, had you done that or come to my house and, you know, whatever, I just, honestly, I needed to be alone. I needed to be there. I needed to feel the pain. And I think that's another thing sometimes, you know, it's like, we just want to get well. And it's been over a year now that Colton's gone. I'm thinking, why are you still crying? Why are you still talking about this? And one of my friends who also suffered a loss said, Lord, this is like,
Just get over it and move on.
yeah,
Mhm.
I don't want
You
to get
can't.
over it, but
Yeah,
I
you
want
can't.
to have love and forgiveness in my heart, and not, especially pray for me, please, with my son, because I'm still, it's a struggle, just because he is so, you know, he's even carrying it into church because he's a deacon and they do a concealed.
Oh,
So I mean,
And you ask
that's hard to
people
do.
why.
I
Why
can't
do you
imagine.
why do you have this gun? I needed to protect myself. And at first, you know, I used to think these people are idiots. And now I just kind of feel really bad for them. Because the fear that they must have, the fear of everything, that they have to be armed against it
Yeah,
all the time.
that's so sad.
It's so
So
sad.
sad.
So
You know, the way I look at it is, what do you do if you're carrying a gun? Are you gonna kill somebody?
I know. And do you know how to use it?
Yeah, well, most of them I think have been through the training, but I
don't know,
think,
Connie.
what are you really? No.
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 Oh,
You can go out and get it done
no.
tomorrow.
I didn't know that.
You don't even need a permit from your sheriff now.
Oh, I did not
And
know
do you
that.
know? Do you know what else I just found out about guns? I was thinking, if you get a gun, the police have a record of where you live.
Yeah.
That's not true. There's
They
some
don't
kind of
know who
law.
else
And you
got
know, I
guns.
was talking to a man last night who was all into guns, and he said, well, the reason for that, now get this, because everybody thinks the Constitution is under attack. I don't want to say we, progressives, liberals, whatever, we are trying to get rid of the Constitution. So they think, no, this is out of the several people's mouths who are very high up in society as money goes. And they're like, we got to have our guns. We don't want you to know where we live. Because if we need a militia, you know what I'm saying? I just couldn't believe it. I was like, dang, I'm just under a hole. But this is part of this whole thing.
It is a lie, and it is based on fear.
Yes.
100% fear. And
I'd rather confront that bear that's been coming to my house than these people carrying
Yeah,
guns.
you use bear spray.
I know, right?
I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'd rather confront the bear than a snake.
With bear
spray.
That's where I am.
I think that
I'd rather face a bear than a snake.
You know, think about what just happened through this last bit of conversation here. The fear of that person has a gun. I need a gun. You know,
Not me.
yeah,
what
guns don't kill people. People kill. That's part of that whole thing. So we all have to have guns.
what people
That will-
need is a little bit more love in their life. And a little bit more
Right.
faith and hope.
But what would happen to the world if guns all of a sudden magically disappeared tomorrow? There were more guns in the world.
They'd use knives.
Yeah, that's what they use in
Well,
England.
but the point is,
They're gonna find something.
but the point is that all of a sudden you don't have this where everybody has to have one.
To fight hand in hand.
Yeah, and people are a lot less likely to
So
do
now we've
that.
got the exact opposite. The only way for you to be safe is you need a gun too.
Not me.
Well,
Not
that's
me.
the narrative I'm saying what you hear out there.
I will not own a gun.
You know, there's
I
a,
buried my guns in the mountain, but now you've made me afraid. What if a bear comes to me?
You don't want to kill
You
him.
got Wiley. Just call her.
Throw some meat on or something.
Just call Wiley.
Just get your pot and pan.
Yeah, pot and pan scared
Go
the
on,
heck
go on. We're invading their space. I was told that by the sheriff here.
I'm ready.
Oh, yeah. They said, we're going to come and help you with your bear. And I said, well, I don't want him here but the house. And they said, well, just scare him to go on somewhere else. But I said, well, I don't want you to come and kill him. But I don't want this bear laying here by my driveway. You know, I just don't. He came this week.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I had washed the ice cream carton before putting it in the garbage. But he still got in my garbage and he
Back a few years ago.
stayed by the
Not too
tree
long
and
ago,
licked on that.
What is tough love?
ice
What
cream
is that
carton.
about?
tough love.
What does that, how does that fit
Also,
in?
translated as the brutal honesty, which I think just is brutal.
What did you say?
There's this focus on the brutality rather than,
That's not how I interpret it.
I mean,
I thought it was,
you don't want to enable people, right?
yeah, but you don't have to do it in a brutal way. No.
I mean, a brutal honesty, if you keep drinking, you're gonna die. Okay. You know.
Well, that's fair.
And definitely.
Well, they're not, at that point, they're not afraid of that anymore.
You might need to take a picture.
I'm not a big tough lover.
Could I make one announcement? We have this grief group that's meeting twice a month, and Paula Dempsey, I don't think she's here, she cannot continue to facilitate it on and on. So we're reaching out, if anybody feels that they might want to facilitate a group, you don't have to have experience. There's a book that you can use. You just need to be here and, facilitate. Just let Joanne or me or Paula know, or if you know somebody.
So, I think it's 10:58, so I think we better bring this to a close. But this
We
week,
need to find out what's going on in the kitchen.
it sounds like there are a lot of clattering.
Good,
This
great.
week,
This isn't
just think about
Sunday to eat.
how fear is keeping you from a reward. And think about how much greater that love is. Acting out of love than acting out of fear. That's what I'm going to try to do. So I'll let you know how it goes.
Thank you.
That's why we meet.